The gunshot echoed through the frozen mountains before Lillian Harrow even realized she'd pulled the trigger. The man crumpled into the snow, blood spreading like spilled wine across white linen. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a merchant's daughter in silk gloves and pearl earrings. Now she stood in a dead man's cabin with a rifle in her hands and a husband bleeding out on the floor behind her. They'd called Cole Maddox a killer, a savage, a monster. They'd been wrong about him, but maybe they'd been right about what this mountain could make of her. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Now let's go back to where it all started. The church bells of Red Hollow rang at noon on the coldest day of 1881, but they weren't ringing for celebration. Lillian Harrow stood in the vestry of St. Catherine's, staring at her reflection in a mirror that had seen better brides. The dress was her mother's, cream silk that had yellowed with age, lace that scratched at her throat like accusation. Her dark hair had been pinned up by Mary Ann, the housekeeper, whose hands had shaken so badly she'd had to start over twice. "You don't have to do this," Mary Ann whispered, her voice cracking. She was 53 and had worked for the Harrow family since Lillian was born. "We could run, right now, out the back. I have a cousin in Denver." "With what money?" Lillian's voice came out flat. "Dead." She'd cried herself empty 2 days ago when her father had told her. Now there was nothing left but a strange, distant numbness. "He's taken everything, even my mother's jewelry. This dress is all that's left." Through the thin walls, she could hear the murmur of the congregation. Red Hollow had turned out in force, not to witness a wedding, but a spectacle. A tragedy. The kind of story people would tell their grandchildren. The day Lillian Harrow married the Devil of Shadow Ridge. The door burst open and her father filled the frame. Charles Harrow, mine owner, town council member, pillar of the community. He looked older than his 49 years. His face was gray, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his collar. "It's time," he said. Lillian turned to face him. "Tell me again why I'm doing this." Something flickered in his eyes. Shame, maybe, or just exhaustion. "Because the alternative is worse. Worse than marrying a man they say killed 3 people with his bare hands? Worse than being dragged into the mountains to live like an animal?" "Yes." Charles stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Lillian, listen to me." "No." She cut him off, her numbness cracking just enough to let anger through. "I've listened to you my whole life. Trust me, Lillian. I know what's best, Lillian. And where has that gotten us? Mother's dead. The mine is failing. And you're selling me like livestock to pay off some debt you won't even explain. I'm protecting you. You're protecting yourself." She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. If she was going to walk to her own execution, she'd do it with dignity. "Let's go. The monster is waiting." The church fell silent when she appeared at the end of the aisle. Every pew was packed. Lillian recognized faces she'd known her whole life. Mrs. Henderson from the Mercantile, Dr. Pritchard, who'd set her broken arm when she was 9, the Calloway brothers who worked her father's mine. They all stared at her with the same expression, pity mixed with morbid fascination. And at the altar, standing next to Reverend Walsh, was Cole Maddox. He was bigger than she'd expected, taller, broader across the shoulders, with the kind of build that came from years of hard labor, not leisure. His dark hair was longer than fashion allowed, brushing his collar. He wore black, a simple suit that looked uncomfortable on him, like he was playing dress-up in someone else's clothes. His face was angular, weathered, with a scar running from his left eyebrow into his hairline. He didn't look nervous, didn't look happy, or sad, or angry. He just watched her approach with the patience of a man waiting for a transaction to complete. Lillian's hands were ice cold. Her father's arm under hers was the only thing keeping her upright. When they reached the altar, Charles didn't say anything. He just transferred her hand to Cole's and stepped back, avoiding her eyes. Cole's hand was warm, calloused, enormous around hers. He didn't squeeze or hold tight, just held her. Steady, impersonal. Reverend Walsh cleared his throat. He was sweating despite the cold, his Bible shaking slightly as he opened it. "Dearly beloved," his voice cracked. He tried again. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The words washed over Lillian like cold water. She stared at the Reverend's collar, at the cross behind the altar, at anything except the man beside her. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Yesterday she'd been planning her spring garden. This morning she'd woken up in her own bed, in her own room, surrounded by her books and her mother's paintings and everything familiar. Now she was here. If anyone objects to this union, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence was absolute, suffocating. Of course, no one objected. Who would dare? Her father's debts were the talk of the town. Everyone knew the Harrow fortune was gone, and everyone knew Cole Maddox's reputation. He killed a man in Deadwood, stabbed him right in the street. I heard he was part of that gang that robbed the Denver train. They say he did things. My brother saw him once, up in the mountains. Said he moved like something wild, not quite human. Stories, rumors, legends. Lillian had heard them all in the past 2 days, whispered by servants and shouted in the streets. Now she was marrying the source of them. Do you, Cole Maddox, take Lillian Harrow to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was deep, rough from disuse, like gravel sliding down a mountain. And do you, Lillian Harrow, take Cole Maddox to be your lawfully wedded husband? Lillian opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Cole's hand shifted slightly in hers. Not pulling, not forcing, just present. She thought about running. The door was right there. She could gather her skirts and bolt, consequences be damned. Let her father face whatever hell he'd created on his own. But where would she go? She had no money, no skills, no family except the man who was selling her. Miss Harrow, Reverend Walsh prompted gently. Her voice was barely a whisper. She tried again. I do. The Reverend sagged with relief. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Colorado and... He paused, swallowing hard. I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss... That won't be necessary, Cole said. He released Lillian's hand and turned to the Reverend. The papers? Walsh fumbled in his robes and produced a marriage certificate with shaking hands. Cole took it, scanned it briefly, then folded it and tucked it inside his jacket. We're done here, he said, and started walking down the aisle. Lillian stood frozen for a heartbeat before her father's hand pressed against her back, urging her forward. She followed Cole in a daze, her feet moving automatically. The congregation parted like water, everyone pressing back into the pews to avoid touching her. Outside, the January cold hit like a slap. Snow had fallen overnight, covering Red Hollow in pristine white that would turn to brown slush by evening. The sun was bright and merciless, making everything sharp-edged and harsh. A wagon waited in front of the church, rough-hewn wood, no decoration, pulled by 2 massive draft horses that looked capable of dragging a house up a mountain, which Lillian supposed they probably had. Cole went to the back of the wagon and pulled out a heavy coat, men's workwear, patched at the elbows, smelling of smoke and pine. He held it out to her. You'll freeze in that dress, he said. Lillian stared at the coat, at him. I have my own. Not where we're going, you don't. Something in his tone made her take the coat. It swallowed her, hanging past her knees, the sleeves covering her hands. She must have looked ridiculous. She didn't care. Her father emerged from the church, followed by a small crowd of onlookers. Charles approached slowly like a man walking to the gallows. Cole, he said, I want to speak with my daughter, privately. Cole looked at Charles for a long moment. Then he nodded once and walked to the front of the wagon, giving them space but not leaving. Charles gripped Lillian's shoulders. Up close, she could see the desperation in his eyes, the lines carved deep around his mouth. Lillian, I need you to understand. I don't want to understand. She pulled away from him. I want you to tell me the truth. What debt could possibly be worth this? What did you do? I can't. He glanced toward Cole, then back to her. There are things you don't know, things I was trying to protect you from. Your mother. Don't. Lillian's voice went hard. Don't you dare use her as an excuse. She died 3 years ago, and whatever you've done, you did it yourself. Charles's face crumpled. For a moment he looked like he might cry. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Take this, he said, pressing it into her hands. It's not much, but it's yours. Your mother would want you to have it. Lillian opened the pouch. Inside was her mother's locket, gold with a tiny portrait inside, and a small roll of bills. Maybe $50. Blood money, she said, but she took it anyway, shoved it deep in the coat pocket. I'm sorry, Charles whispered. I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Cole's voice cut through the moment. Time to go. Lillian turned away from her father without another word. She walked to the wagon where Cole stood waiting by the step. He offered his hand to help her up. She ignored it and climbed up herself. The seat was rough wood, no cushion. She gathered her skirts and sat, staring straight ahead. Cole settled beside her, taking up more than his share of space. He picked up the reins. Wait! Marianne came running from the church, her skirts hiked up, her gray hair coming loose from its bun. She was carrying a bundle wrapped in brown paper. Food, she gasped, shoving it at Lillian. And she pressed something else into Lillian's hand, closing her fingers around it. A small knife, the handle worn smooth with use. Just in case. Marianne, you're a good girl, Marianne said fiercely, tears streaming down her weathered face. Don't you forget that. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. Cole clicked to the horses. The wagon lurched forward. Lillian twisted in her seat, watching as Marianne grew smaller, as the church receded, as Red Hollow itself began to fade behind them. Her father stood in front of the church, a dark figure against white snow, one hand raised in farewell or plea or apology. She turned back around and didn't look again. They rode in silence. The main road through Red Hollow gave way to a narrower track, then to something barely more than a trail. The town disappeared behind them, swallowed by pine forest and rising slopes. The only sounds were the jingle of harness, the creak of wagon wheels, the heavy breathing of the horses. Lillian kept her hands folded in her lap, Marianne's knife pressed against her palm under the coat. She watched the landscape change, familiar mining country giving way to wilderness. The trees grew denser, the slopes steeper. Snow lay thick and undisturbed under the pines. An hour passed, then two. Finally, Lillian couldn't stand it anymore. Where are we going? Cole didn't look at her. Shadow Ridge. That's not a place. That's a direction. It's both. How far? 4 hours, maybe 5, depending on the snow. Lillian did the math. They'd left Red Hollow at 1 in the afternoon. That meant they'd arrive at dark. In the mountains, in January. Do you have a house? Cabin. Big cabin or small cabin? Does it matter? Yes, she said sharply. It matters. Everything matters now. You've taken me from everything I know. The least you could do is tell me what I'm walking into. Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, 2 rooms, loft for sleeping, stone fireplace, well out back, root cellar, barn for the horses. That's it? That's where we're living? That's where I'm living. You'll figure out your part soon enough. The casual dismissal in his tone sparked something in Lillian, anger, finally breaking through the numbness. My part? She repeated. What exactly is my part in this? Am I supposed to cook, clean, warm your bed? What did my father promise you exactly? Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't promise me anything. Then why are you doing this? Don't tell me it's out of the goodness of your heart. Men like you don't do favors. Men like me. Cole's voice was flat, dangerous. What do you know about men like me? I know the stories. Stories! He barked a laugh, short and bitter. Let me guess. I'm a killer, a savage. I eat children and howl at the moon. That about cover it? Lillian lifted her chin. Did you kill 3 men in Deadwood? 1. Her breath caught. Did you rob the Denver train? No. But you were part of the gang? I was a lot of things. Most of them I'm not proud of. And now? What are you now? Cole turned to look at her for the first time since they'd left the church. His eyes were dark, brown maybe, though hard to tell in the shadows under the pines. There was something in them that made Lillian's pulse quicken. Not fear exactly, something more complicated. Now, he said slowly, I'm a man trying to live quiet, and you're making that harder. I'm making it harder? You're the one who showed up in Red Hollow demanding marriage like some kind of... I didn't demand anything. My father said, your father's a liar. The words hit like a physical blow. Lillian opened her mouth to defend Charles, but the protest died in her throat. Because wasn't it true? Hadn't he lied about the state of the mines, about his debts, about everything? What really happened? She asked quietly. Cole returned his attention to the trail ahead. That's between me and him. It concerns me too. I'm the one being sold. You weren't sold. Then what was I? Protected. Lillian laughed, a high, sharp sound that startled a crow from a nearby tree. Protected? From what? My father's creditors? The shame of poverty? What could possibly be worse than this? Cole said nothing. The silence stretched. The wagon climbed higher, the air growing thinner and colder. Lillian pulled the coat tighter around herself. Her wedding dress was already filthy at the hem from climbing into the wagon. The lace at her throat felt like it was choking her. I won't be your wife, she said finally. Not in any way that matters. Suits me fine. I mean it. You can drag me to your cabin, but you can't make me— I'm not going to touch you, Cole interrupted. His voice was tired. You can sleep in the loft. I'll take the downstairs. We'll stay out of each other's way. When spring comes, we'll figure out what's next. What's next? You're just going to let me leave? If that's what you want. Lillian studied his profile, the hard line of his jaw, the scar cutting through his eyebrow, the tension in his shoulders. He didn't look like a man who'd just acquired a wife. He looked like a man carrying a burden. I don't believe you, she said. Don't have to. People don't just do things like this out of kindness. There's always a price. Then I guess you'll find out what it is. The trail grew steeper. The horses strained against their harnesses, breath pluming white in the freezing air. Through breaks in the trees, Lillian caught glimpses of the valley below. Red Hollow, shrinking to toy size, smoke from its chimneys barely visible. She thought about the people down there, Mrs. Henderson closing up her shop, Dr. Pritchard making his evening rounds, her father sitting alone in the big house on Copper Street, surrounded by empty rooms and furniture he'd probably have to sell. Did he feel guilty? Did he lie awake at night thinking about what he'd done? Or was he relieved to have her gone? One less problem to worry about. I hate him, Lillian said, not realizing she'd spoken aloud until Cole responded. Good. Hate's honest. Do you hate him? I don't waste energy on hate, especially not for men like Charles Harrow. Men like him, Lillian echoed. What does that mean? Weak men who make bad choices and let other people pay for them. And you? Are you a weak man? Cole's mouth curved in something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. I make bad choices too, but I pay my own debts. The sun was setting by the time they reached Shadow Ridge. It wasn't what Lillian expected. Not a single cabin, but a small clearing carved from the forest, maybe 2 acres of flat ground surrounded by towering pines. The cabin sat at the far end, rough-hewn logs, a stone chimney trailing smoke, 2 small windows glowing with lamplight. Someone was there. Waiting. Cole pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the cabin. A man emerged, younger than Cole, maybe 30, with red hair and a thick beard. He wore heavy work clothes and a gun belt. About damn time, the man said. I was starting to think you'd changed your mind. Just took longer than expected. Cole climbed down from the wagon, moving with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his body. He went around to Lillian's side and offered his hand again. This time she took it. Her legs were stiff from hours of sitting. She nearly stumbled stepping down, and Cole's hand on her elbow steadied her. This is Tom Fletcher, Cole said, nodding toward the red-headed man. He keeps an eye on the place when I'm gone. Tom stared at Lillian with open curiosity. So the rumors are true. You actually went through with it. Tom, Cole's voice carried a warning. What? I'm just saying, when you told me you were getting married, I figured— Tom caught Cole's expression and stopped. He turned to Lillian with an awkward half-bow. Ma'am, welcome to Shadow Ridge. Thank you, Lillian said automatically, though nothing about this felt welcoming. Everything secure? Cole asked Tom. Checked the perimeter this morning. No tracks except mine and yours from last week. Brought up supplies like you asked. Flour, salt, coffee, lamp oil. Left it in the cabin. Good. Tom hesitated. You sure about this, Cole? Because if you need— I'm sure. Right, well, Tom walked to where a horse was tied near the barn. I'll leave you to it then. You know where to find me if things get complicated. He mounted and rode off into the darkening forest without another word. Cole and Lillian stood in the clearing, the wagon between them and the cabin, the weight of everything unspoken pressing down like the approaching night. Come on, Cole finally said. I'll show you inside. The cabin was warmer than Lillian expected. A fire burned in the massive stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across rough-planked walls. The space was sparse. A table with 2 chairs, a counter along one wall for food preparation, shelves holding dishes and supplies. A door led to what must be the other room Cole had mentioned. And above, accessed by a ladder, was the loft. You can sleep up there, Cole said, nodding toward it. There's blankets, should be warm enough with the fire going. Lillian looked around the cabin with a sinking feeling. This was it. This was her life now. Where's my trunk? She asked. My things? Didn't bring any. What? But my clothes, my books? Tom brought what you'll need. Work clothes, boots, nothing fancy. You can't just... I have belongings, personal items. Can't use silk dresses and satin slippers up here. You'll learn practical, or you'll freeze. Rage flooded through Lillian, hot and sudden. You had no right to decide what I need. Those things are mine. Those things are useless. They're all I have left of my old life. Your old life is gone, Cole said, his voice hard. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Lillian wanted to scream at him, wanted to throw something. Wanted to climb back in that wagon and drive herself down the mountain, consequences be damned. Instead, she turned and climbed the ladder to the loft. It was smaller than she'd thought, barely enough room to stand upright in the center, sloping down to nothing at the edges. A narrow bed sat against one wall, piled with heavy quilts. One small window looked out over the clearing. Lillian sat on the bed and finally let herself cry. Below she heard Cole moving around, the clink of dishes, the creak of the door as he went outside, the sounds of a man going about his evening routine, completely unaffected by the fact that he'd just dragged a woman up a mountain and trapped her in his cabin. She cried until she had nothing left. Then she lay back on the bed, still wearing her mother's wedding dress and Cole's coat, and stared at the rough ceiling. This morning she'd been Lillian Harrow, merchant's daughter, member of Red Hollow Society. Tonight she was, what? A wife who wasn't really a wife. A captive who wasn't really a captive. Something in between, with no name and no identity. The loft darkened as the fire burned lower. Lillian heard Cole climb into the loft. Or no, he said he'd sleep downstairs. She heard him settling below her, the creak of floorboards, then silence. Outside, wind moved through the pines. Some night bird called, lonely and distant. Lillian closed her eyes, knowing sleep wouldn't come, that she'd lie awake all night in this strange bed, in this strange place with this strange man below her. But exhaustion was a powerful thing. Within minutes, despite everything, she slept. She woke to gray dawn light and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came crashing back. The wedding, the wagon ride, this cabin in the mountains. Lillian sat up, wincing at muscles stiff from yesterday's journey. Her dress was hopelessly wrinkled, the lace at her throat torn. She must look like a madwoman. She climbed down the ladder carefully. The main room was empty, but the fire had been rebuilt and coffee sat warming on a metal plate over the coals. A cup waited on the table beside a plate of bread and what looked like dried venison. Through the window, she saw Cole outside, carrying wood from a shed to the cabin. He'd changed clothes, simple work pants and a heavy shirt, suspenders, boots caked with snow. He moved with purpose, stacking the wood beside the door with practiced efficiency. Lillian poured herself coffee. It was strong, bitter, nothing like the delicate tea she was used to. She forced herself to drink it anyway. Cole came in carrying an armload of wood, which he stacked beside the fireplace. He glanced at her but didn't speak. "Is there water?" Lillian asked. "For washing?" He nodded toward a pitcher on the counter. "Well water, cold. If you want it warm, heat it yourself." "I don't know how." "You'll learn." He went back outside. Lillian stared at the pitcher, at the fire, at the pot sitting beside it. She'd never done this before. At home, Marianne had always prepared the wash water, brought it up to her room in a porcelain basin. But Mary Ann wasn't here. No one was here except Cole, and he'd made it clear he wasn't going to help. Fine. She poured water into the pot and set it near the fire. While it heated, she ate the bread and venison, which was tougher and saltier than anything she'd eaten before, but she was hungry enough not to care. By the time Cole came back in, she'd managed to heat the water and was attempting to wash her face with a rough cloth she'd found. He watched her for a moment. "There's clothes in the other room. They'll fit better than what you're wearing. I'd like to keep my dress." "Suit yourself, but you can't work in that." "Work?" Cole gave her a look that said she was being deliberately dense. "This isn't Red Hollow. Nobody's going to cook and clean for you. You want to eat, you help. You want to stay warm, you help. That's how it works up here." "I don't know how to do any of that." "Then you'll learn fast." He left again. Lillian stood in the middle of the cabin, hot anger building in her chest. How dare he? How dare he drag her up here and expect her to just, what? Become some kind of frontier woman overnight? But even as she raged internally, a colder voice whispered, "What choice do you have?" She went into the other room, a small space with a simple bed, a trunk, and hooks on the wall for hanging clothes. On the bed sat a pile of garments, wool pants, heavy shirts, long underwear, thick socks. All men's clothing, roughly her size. Lillian picked up the pants with distaste. She'd never worn pants in her life. Ladies didn't. But ladies also didn't live in mountain cabins with strange men who expected them to work. She changed, fumbling with the unfamiliar buttons and ties. The clothes were rough against her skin, but warm. Warmer than any dress she'd ever worn. She caught sight of herself in a small mirror on the wall and barely recognized the figure staring back. Wild dark hair, no corset, no jewelry, dressed like a man. Her mother would have been horrified. The thought brought fresh tears which she wiped away angrily. No, she wasn't going to cry anymore. Tears didn't solve anything. She went back outside to find Cole. He was at the barn tending to the horses. The interior was rough but clean, with 2 stalls and a small tack room. The horses from yesterday stood contentedly munching hay. "I'm ready," Lillian announced. Cole looked up from checking one of the horse's hooves. "Ready for what?" "To work. To learn. Whatever it is you expect me to do." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite surprised, but close. "Can you milk a goat?" "A what?" "Goat. 4 legs, gives milk, stubborn as hell." No, I've never." "Then that's where we start." He led her to a small pen behind the barn where 2 goats watched them with unnerving intelligence. "This is Mabel," Cole said, pointing to the larger one. "She's mean. This is Gertie, she's meaner. They give about a gallon a day between them if you're lucky, and they're in a good mood." "How do I—" "Watch first." Cole moved into the pen with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He caught Mabel with surprising gentleness, murmuring to her as he positioned a bucket and began to milk. His hands moved surely, rhythmically. "Your turn," he said after a few minutes, standing up. Lillian approached Mabel like she was approaching a wild animal, which, in a way, she was. "Sit," Cole instructed. She sat on the stool he'd been using. "Now, reach under and—" "No, not like that. Gentle but firm. She'll kick if you're too tentative." Lillian tried. Mabel shifted, uncooperative. "Again?" She tried again and again. By the 10th attempt, she'd gotten maybe a cup of milk, and Mabel had stepped on her foot twice. "That's enough for today," Cole said. "We'll try again tomorrow." "I can do it. Your hands aren't used to it. Keep trying now, and you'll blister. Can't work with blistered hands." Over the following hours, Cole introduced her to the rhythm of mountain life. Checking water in the well, splitting kindling, feeding chickens she hadn't even known existed. Everything had a purpose, a place, a method. He didn't coddle her or offer excessive instruction, just showed her once, watched her try, corrected when necessary. By midday, Lillian's hands ached, her back hurt, and she was more exhausted than she'd ever been. But she'd successfully split 3 pieces of kindling, collected 4 eggs, and managed not to let Gertie escape when Cole opened the pen. Small victories, pathetic victories, but victories nonetheless. They ate a silent lunch, more bread, cheese that was sharp and crumbly, apples that were starting to wrinkle. Cole cleaned his plate and went back outside without comment. Lillian sat at the table staring at her rough, reddened hands. These weren't her hands. The Lillian Harrow who'd woken up yesterday morning had soft hands, manicured nails, rings on 3 fingers. That Lillian was gone. She didn't know yet what would take her place. The days bled together in a haze of cold and exhaustion and small humiliations that Lillian hadn't known existed. On the 3rd morning, she burned the cornbread so badly that even the chickens wouldn't eat it. Cole scraped the blackened mess into the slop bucket without comment, then made his own breakfast while she watched, face burning with shame. On the 5th day, she tried to fetch water from the well and dropped the bucket. It took Cole 20 minutes with a hook and rope to fish it out while she stood there uselessly, fighting back tears. On the 7th day, Mabel kicked her square in the thigh hard enough to leave a bruise the size of a fist. Lillian limped back to the cabin and refused to go near the goats for 2 days. Cole never yelled, never mocked her. Somehow that made it worse. He'd just look at her with those unreadable dark eyes, then fix whatever she'd broken or finish whatever she'd started and go back to work. She hated him for his competence, hated the way he moved through each day with calm certainty while she stumbled from one disaster to the next. Hated that he dragged her into this life and then expected her to just adapt like it was nothing. But more than that, she hated herself for failing. 2 weeks into her new life, Lillian woke before dawn to the sound of something moving outside the cabin. She lay still in the loft, listening. Heavy footsteps. Too heavy to be Cole. Her hand found Marianne's knife under her pillow. She'd kept it there every night, though she didn't know what good it would do against whatever was out there. The footsteps circled the cabin once, twice, then stopped at the door. Lillian heard Cole moving below, the soft click of a rifle being cocked. "Stay up there," he called quietly. "Don't make a sound." She pressed herself flat against the bed, heart hammering. Through the small loft window, she could see nothing but darkness and snow. The footsteps moved away from the door, toward the barn. Cole swore under his breath and moved to the window. Lillian heard him exhale slowly. "Bear," he said. "Big one. After the chickens." He opened the door and stepped out into the pre-dawn cold, wearing only his undershirt and pants, rifle in hand. Lillian scrambled to the window. In the growing light, she could just make out a massive dark shape near the barn, easily twice Cole's size. It was pawing at the door, testing the wood. "Hey!" Cole shouted. "Get on!" The bear turned to look at him. Even from a distance, Lillian could see its teeth. Cole fired a shot into the air. The crack echoed across the clearing like thunder. The bear didn't move. Cole fired again, this time into the ground near the bear's feet. Snow exploded upward. The bear finally decided Cole was more trouble than chickens were worth. It dropped to all fours and lumbered off into the trees, moving with surprising speed for something so large. Cole stood there for a long moment, rifle still raised, making sure it was really gone. Then he lowered the weapon and came back inside. Lillian climbed down the ladder. "Does that happen often?" "Often enough." Cole set the rifle by the door and began rebuilding the fire. Winter drives them down from higher elevations. They smell the animals and come looking for easy food. What if it comes back? It might. We'll deal with it if it does. Just like that? You'll deal with it? Cole looked at her over his shoulder. What else would I do? Most people would move, find somewhere safer. Nowhere safe. At least here I know what I'm dealing with. He said it so matter-of-factly, like living with the constant threat of bears and freezing to death in isolation was just normal. Maybe for him it was. Lillian sat at the table, pulling Cole's coat tight around her nightshirt. Why do you live like this? Like what? Alone. Up here. With nothing and no one. Cole poured coffee, handed her a cup. Asked myself the same thing about you yesterday. That's different. I didn't choose this. Neither did I. Not exactly. What's that supposed to mean? He sat across from her, wrapping his hands around his own cup. In the firelight, the scar on his forehead stood out pale against his skin. You want the story? He asked. Yes. All right. He took a long drink of coffee. I was born in Missouri, dirt-poor farming family. 6 kids, never enough food. When I was 14, my father sold me to a cattle outfit heading west. Told me it was a job. Turned out to be more like slavery. Worked their herds for 3 years before I ran. Lillian listened, saying nothing. Ended up in Deadwood during the gold rush. Did whatever work I could find. Mining, hauling, building. Met a man there. Name was Jack Reeves. He ran with a bad crowd, but he treated me decent. Taught me to shoot, to fight, to survive. The gang, Lillian said. Yeah, Jack's gang. We robbed freight wagons, held up small-town banks. Nothing like that Denver train everyone talks about. That was different people, but the law didn't care about details. Anyone who'd ever ridden with Jack got blamed. And the man you killed? Cole's jaw tightened. Card cheat. Pulled a knife on Jack during a game. I shot him before he could use it. Jack was already dead by then, but I didn't know it yet. The knife had gotten him in the gut while I was getting my gun out. So you killed someone to save a dead man. That's about the size of it. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sky was turning from black to gray. I left Deadwood after that, Cole continued. Drifted for a while. Ended up here 5 years ago. Built this cabin. Figured if I stayed far enough from people, they'd leave me alone. Did they? Mostly. Tom Fletcher comes up every few weeks with supplies and news. Otherwise, I don't see anyone from 1 month to the next. That sounds lonely. Cole shrugged. Lonely's better than dead, better than jail. Lillian thought about that. About choosing isolation over risk. About building walls so high nothing could get in. Not danger, but not comfort either. So what changed? She asked. Why come to Red Hollow? Why marry me? That's a longer story. We've got time. Cole looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he stood and went to the shelf, pulled down a tin box and brought it back to the table. Inside were letters, maybe a dozen of them, tied with string. These started coming about 6 months ago, he said, through Tom. Someone in Red Hollow was writing to me. My father? No. Cole pulled out one of the letters and handed it to her. Read it. The handwriting was feminine, elegant. Lillian recognized it immediately. Her mother's. That's impossible, she whispered. She's been dead for 3 years. They're old letters. Someone found them and started sending them to me. Lillian opened the letter with shaking hands. My dearest Cole, I hope this letter finds you well. It has been too long since we've spoken, and there is much I need to tell you. She looked up at Cole. You knew my mother? She was my sister. The words hit Lillian like a physical blow. What? Half-sister, technically. Same mother, different fathers. Mine died when I was 3. Hers, your grandfather, took our mother back but wouldn't claim me. Said I had bad blood. When he married her off to Charles Harrow, she begged to bring me along. He refused. Lillian's mind raced. But that means, it means I'm your uncle. And when I got those letters, when I found out what your father was into, I came to Red Hollow to stop it. Stop what? What was he into? Cole pulled out another letter. Read this one, the last one your mother wrote before she died. Lillian's hands trembled as she unfolded it. Cole, if you receive this, it means I've run out of time. Charles has fallen in with dangerous people. A syndicate out of Denver. They call themselves the Covenant. They loaned him money to expand the mines, but the terms, Cole, the terms were monstrous. If he defaults, they take everything, including Lillian. The letter went on, detailing things that made Lillian's stomach turn. The Covenant wasn't a legitimate business organization. It was a criminal enterprise that specialized in acquiring young women from desperate families and placing them in brothels across the West. I've tried to make Charles see reason, but he's in too deep. The debt is too large. He'll never be able to pay it back. When I'm gone, and Cole, I know I'm going, please watch over her. Please don't let them take my daughter. Lillian set the letter down with numb fingers. When did you get this? 8 months ago. Took me 4 months to track down who'd sent it and verify the information, then 2 months to figure out the best play. The marriage. The marriage. If you were legally my wife, the Covenant couldn't claim you. Their contract with your father specified an unmarried daughter as collateral. Once you were married, that contract was void. Lillian's throat felt tight. So you didn't want to marry me? Hell no. No offense. Then why didn't you just tell me? Tell my father? Why the secrecy? Cole leaned back in his chair. Because your father's a coward. If he knew I was trying to save you instead of claim you, he might have panicked, might have tried to hide you somewhere the Covenant would find. This way, he thought he was paying off his debt to me, saving himself. What debt? There isn't one. I lied. Told him I'd loaned him money years ago through intermediaries, and now I was calling it in. He believed me because men like Charles always have more debts than they remember. Lillian stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. So this whole thing, the wedding, bringing me here, it was all to save me from being sold to a brothel? Basically. And you couldn't just tell me because you'd have asked questions, made a scene, maybe tried to confront your father. The Covenant had people watching Red Hollow. They needed to believe you were actually married, actually gone. One whiff of deception, and they'd have taken you anyway. Lillian paced to the window and back. Her whole body felt electric with anger and relief and confusion. My father knew, she said slowly. He knew what he'd done, what he'd promised them. Yeah. And he was going to let it happen. Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. Lillian thought about her father's face at the wedding, the shame, the apologies, the way he couldn't meet her eyes. I want to kill him, she said. Get in line. She turned to face Cole. Why didn't you? Because he's your father. Like it or not, he's family, and I've killed enough people. One person. You killed one person. One is enough. They stared at each other across the dim cabin. Outside, full daylight was breaking, painting the snow golden. So what now? Lillian asked. The Covenant thinks I'm married. My father thinks his debt is paid. What happens when they figure out the truth? They won't. As far as anyone knows, you're Cole Maddox's wife living up on Shadow Ridge. The marriage is legal. The paperwork's filed. There's nothing to figure out. And in the spring, when I leave? Something flickered in Cole's eyes. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Lillian wanted to push, to demand more answers, but exhaustion was catching up with her. The adrenaline from the bear, from the letters, from everything was draining away, leaving her hollow. I need to think, she said. Take your time. She climbed back to the loft and lay on the bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. Her mother's sister, her uncle. A criminal syndicate. A marriage that was fake but legally binding. A father who'd been willing to sell her to save himself. It was too much. All of it. She must have fallen back asleep because the next thing she knew, it was afternoon and the smell of cooking meat was drifting up from below. Lillian climbed down to find Cole at the stove, stirring something in a pot. The table was set with 2 bowls and a loaf of bread. Venison stew, he said without turning around. Nothing fancy. She sat at the table. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. You're going to need your strength. For what? He turned to look at her. Storm's coming. Big one. We've got maybe 6 hours to prepare. How do you know? The way the air feels. The way the animals are acting. I've seen enough mountain storms to recognize the signs. He ladled stew into her bowl. It was thick, heavy with vegetables and chunks of meat. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. What do we need to do? She asked. Secure the animals. Bring in extra firewood. Make sure the shutters are tight. Fill every container we have with water in case the well freezes over. How long will the storm last? Could be a day. Could be a week. Lillian set down her spoon. A week? Trapped in this cabin? You got somewhere else to be? She almost laughed. No, I suppose I don't. They spent the afternoon in preparation. Cole moved with practiced efficiency, and Lillian followed his lead. She helped stack wood by the door until her arms ached, filled pots and buckets with water until the counter was crowded with containers, scattered extra feed in the chicken coop, and made sure Mabel and Gertie had enough hay to last. By the time they finished, the sky had turned a sick yellow-gray, and the wind was picking up, rattling the shutters. That's it, Cole said, securing the last shutter. Now we wait. The storm hit just after dark. Lillian had never experienced anything like it. Wind screamed around the cabin like something alive and furious. Snow didn't fall so much as fly horizontally, striking the walls with a sound like thrown sand. The temperature plummeted so fast she could feel it through the logs. Cole fed the fire constantly, keeping it roaring. Even so, cold seeped in through every crack and gap. Get more blankets from the loft, he told her. We'll need them. She brought down every quilt and blanket she could find. Cole arranged them near the fire, creating a sort of nest. "Sleep down here tonight," he said. "Loft'll be too cold." Lillian wanted to argue on principle, but her teeth were already chattering. "Fine." They sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets, listening to the storm rage. The cabin creaked and groaned under the assault. Snow found its way through gaps in the shutters, forming small drifts on the windowsills. "Is it always like this?" Lillian asked. "This is worse than usual, but yeah, winter up here is hard." "Why stay then? You could go anywhere." Cole poked at the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. "Told you, nowhere safe." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." Lillian pulled her blanket tighter. "I don't understand you." "Join the club. You save me from criminals, drag me to a mountain, refuse to touch me, then tell me I can leave in spring. None of it makes sense." "Life doesn't make sense. You do what you can and hope it's enough." "That's bleak. That's honest." The wind howled louder, and something heavy hit the roof, probably a branch. The whole cabin shuddered. Lillian found herself moving closer to Cole, not quite touching, but near enough to feel his warmth. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." "Aren't you scared?" "Every damn day." She looked at him in surprise. "Of what?" "Failing. Making the wrong choice. Getting someone hurt." He paused. "Getting you hurt." "Why do you care? You didn't even know me 2 weeks ago." Your family, that matters." "We share blood, not history." "Blood's enough." Lillian thought about her father, who shared both blood and history with her, and how little it had meant when it came down to it. "No," she said quietly. "It's not." They fell silent. The fire crackled and popped. The storm continued its assault. Somewhere around midnight, exhaustion won over fear. Lillian's eyes grew heavy despite the noise. "Sleep," Cole said. "I'll keep the fire going." "You need to sleep too." "I'll rest when the worst passes." But when Lillian woke hours later, she found him slumped against the stone fireplace, blanket pulled over his shoulders, deep asleep. The fire had burned low but not out. Snow had stopped battering the cabin, though wind still howled outside. She got up carefully, trying not to wake him, and added wood to the fire. It was something she'd watched him do 100 times. The logs caught, flames licking up hungrily. Cole stirred but didn't wake. In sleep, he looked younger. The hard lines around his mouth had softened. His hands, which were always busy during the day, lay relaxed on his lap. Lillian studied him in the firelight. This man who'd turned her life upside down, who'd saved her from a fate she hadn't even known was coming, who kept his distance even though she was supposedly his wife. He'd killed someone, ridden with criminals, built a life in isolation. But he'd also come to Red Hollow to protect her, given her a way out, asked nothing in return. She didn't know what to do with that, with him, with any of this. So she did the only thing she could. She added another log to the fire, wrapped herself in a blanket, and went back to sleep. The storm lasted 3 days. By the second day, cabin fever had set in hard. There was only so much sitting and staring at walls a person could take. Lillian tried to read one of the few books Cole had, a battered copy of Robinson Crusoe, but couldn't focus. Cole carved. He had a piece of wood and a small knife, and he worked it with patient precision, shaving off curls that fell into the fire. "What are you making?" Lillian asked. "Spoon." "We have spoons." "Can always use another." She watched his hands move, sure and steady. "Where did you learn that?" "Prison. Did 6 months in Deadwood after the shooting while they investigated. Old man in the cell next to mine was a woodworker. He taught me through the bars." "You were in prison?" "Self-defense got me out eventually, but yeah, I was in." Lillian absorbed this. Another piece of the puzzle that was Cole Maddox. What was it like? Dark, cold, boring, violent when it wasn't boring. "Did you—" She stopped, not sure if she wanted to know. "Did I what?" "Did you get into fights?" "Some. Had to. Show weakness in a place like that and you're dead." "Did you win?" Cole smiled slightly. "I'm here, aren't I?" By the third day, the storm had blown itself out, leaving behind drifts that reached the cabin's eaves. Cole forced the door open, pushing against snow that had piled against it, and they emerged into a world transformed. Everything was white. The clearing, the barn, the trees, all buried under feet of fresh powder. The sky was achingly blue, the air so cold it hurt to breathe. "We'll need to dig out the barn," Cole said. "Make sure the animals have access to water." It took hours. They shoveled until Lillian's back screamed and her hands, even in thick gloves, had gone numb. But eventually they cleared a path to the barn, then to the well, then to the chicken coop. The animals had survived. Mabel and Gertie were annoyed but healthy. The chickens were ruffled but laying. The horses stood placidly in their stalls, unbothered by the drama outside. That night, Lillian cooked dinner for the first time without burning it. The cornbread was lopsided and the beans were under-seasoned, but it was edible. Cole ate 2 helpings without comment. "It's not good," Lillian said. "It's fine. It's barely food. I've had worse." "That's not the compliment you think it is." He almost smiled. "You'll get better." "Will I? Or will I just get used to being terrible at everything?" Cole set down his spoon. "You're not terrible. You're learning. There's a difference. I can't milk a goat without getting kicked. I can't split wood without nearly taking my foot off. I can't cook, can't fetch water, can't do anything useful. You survived 3 days trapped in a cabin during the worst storm this mountain's seen in years. You helped dig us out. You fed the animals. That's not nothing." Lillian felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. "I feel useless." "You're not. You're just not what you used to be. That takes adjustment." "Well, what if I can't adjust? What if I'm not strong enough for this?" Cole looked at her steadily. "You're stronger than you think. You just don't know it yet." She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the confidence he seemed to have in her, but all she felt was tired. That night, as she climbed to the loft, Cole called up to her. "Lillian." She paused on the ladder. "Yeah?" "You did good today." 4 words. Simple. Probably meaningless to him. But she carried them with her into sleep like a candle against the dark. The days after the storm settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal, though Lillian wouldn't have recognized her life from a month ago. She woke before dawn now without Cole having to call her. Her hands had developed calluses that made milking the goats marginally less painful, though Mabel still kicked her at least once a week out of what seemed like pure spite. The bread she baked was only slightly lopsided. She could split kindling without Cole hovering nearby like she was about to lose a finger. Small victories that felt enormous. Tom Fletcher arrived on a clear morning in mid-February, his horse laboring through snow that still lay thick across the trail. Lillian was outside hauling water when she heard the sound of hoofbeats. "Cole!" she called, and hated how her voice pitched higher with alarm. Cole emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. He relaxed when he saw Tom, but only slightly. "Wasn't expecting you for another week," Cole said as Tom dismounted. "Had news that couldn't wait." Tom's eyes flicked to Lillian, then back to Cole. "We should talk inside." The 3 of them crowded into the cabin. Tom accepted coffee but waved off food, which immediately told Lillian that whatever he'd come to say was bad. "The Covenant knows," Tom said without preamble. Cole went very still. "Knows what?" "About the marriage being a dodge." Someone in Red Hollow started asking questions. Why would Cole Maddox, known outlaw, suddenly show up claiming a debt nobody could verify? Why marry the girl instead of just taking money? Who was asking? Man named Pike. Showed up about 2 weeks ago. Big guy, scar across his throat, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Started drinking with the miners, buying rounds, getting friendly. Asked real casual-like about Charles Harrow's debts and his daughter's sudden marriage. Lillian felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. What did people tell him? Not much at first, but you know how towns are. Enough whiskey and everyone's a storyteller. Someone mentioned that Cole showed up out of nowhere. Someone else said they'd never heard of any debt. Pike put it together. Cole set down his coffee cup with controlled precision. "Where's Pike now?" "Left Red Hollow 3 days ago. Headed this direction? I'd bet my horse on it." "How many men?" "At least 3 that I saw. Could be more." Cole nodded slowly, his face giving away nothing. But Lillian had learned to read the small signs, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand kept drifting toward where his gun would be if he were wearing it. "How long do we have?" Cole asked. "Hard to say. Storm slowed everyone down. The trails are hell right now. But Pike strikes me as the determined type. I'd say 2 days, maybe 3. That's not enough time to get Lillian out. No, Tom agreed. It's not. Lillian looked between them. Get me out where? Anywhere that isn't here, Cole said. Tom has a place 20 miles south. There's also a mining camp about 15 miles east. Either one would be safer than Shadow Ridge. 20 miles through snow with armed men hunting me? How is that safer? Because they're looking for you here. So let's give them what they want, Lillian said, and both men turned to stare at her. I mean, not actually, but make them think they've found me. Set a trap. Tom let out a low whistle. She's got spine, I'll give her that. No, Cole said flatly. Why not? You said they're coming here anyway. At least this way we'd have the advantage. The advantage? Cole's voice went hard. Lillian, these aren't miners or shopkeepers. These are killers, professional ones. The kind who wouldn't think twice about putting a bullet in you just to make a point. Then teach me to shoot. In 2 days? Against men who've been doing this for years? Better than running and hoping they don't catch us. Cole stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. No, we're not doing this. You don't get to decide that? The hell I don't. I brought you here to keep you safe, not to get you killed. And what happens after? Lillian stood to face him. Let's say we run. We hide. They don't find us this time. Then what? We spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, moving every time someone asks the wrong questions? If that's what it takes. That's not living. That's just surviving. Surviving beats the alternative. Tom cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt, but she's got a point, Cole. These people don't quit. You embarrassed them when you pulled this marriage stunt, made them look like fools. They'll keep coming until they get what they want or someone stops them. Cole turned on him. You're not helping. I'm being honest. You want me to lie and say running will fix this? The cabin fell into tense silence. Outside, a crow called, harsh and mocking. Finally, Cole spoke. If we do this, and that's a big if, you follow my lead. Exactly. No improvising, no heroics. Understood? Lillian nodded. Understood. Tom, I'll need your help. Can you stay? Wouldn't miss it. Good. Then we've got work to do. The next 2 days were a crash course in violence. Cole started with the basics. How to hold a gun without flinching. How to sight down the barrel. How to breathe through the kick when it fired. Lillian's first shot went wide by 6 feet and left her ears ringing despite the cloth Cole had her stuff in them. The second shot hit dirt 3 feet in front of the target. By the 10th, she managed to clip the edge of the tree they were using for practice. You're jerking the trigger, Cole said. Squeeze it, slow and steady. I am squeezing it. You're yanking it like it bit you. Again. They practiced until her hands shook from the cold and the recoil. Then they practiced some more. Tom worked on the cabin, reinforcing the shutters, moving furniture to create cover, setting up sight lines from the windows. He worked with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done this before. You've defended places like this, Lillian said, watching him nail boards across a weak spot in the wall. Once or twice. Not proud of all of them, but you learn what works. What works? Tom paused, considering. Knowing the ground better than they do, making them come to you on your terms, and a little bit of luck doesn't hurt. That's not reassuring. Wasn't meant to be. This is serious business, ma'am. People are going to get hurt, maybe killed. You need to be ready for that. Lillian thought about the weight of the gun in her hands, the way it felt to pull the trigger, knowing that in a different context, she might be aiming at a person instead of a tree. I don't know if I can do it, she admitted. Kill someone. You won't know until the moment comes. But I'll tell you this, it's easier when it's them or you. When someone's pointing a gun at you or someone you care about, the choice gets real simple. That night, Cole taught her about the cabin itself, where the weak points were. Which windows offered the best views of the approaches, where to position herself if shooting started. You stay in the loft, he said. It's the most defensible position. You can see both doors from up there, and anyone trying to come up the ladder is an easy target. Where will you be? Down here, watching the windows? Tom will be in the barn. If they come from multiple directions, we'll have them in a crossfire. And if they burn us out? Then we go out shooting and hope for the best. His bluntness should have terrified her. Instead, it was almost comforting. No false promises, no reassurances that everything would be fine. Just the truth, stark and simple. Cole? She said as he checked the rifle she'd been practicing with. Yeah? Why are you doing this? You could run. Take Tom and the horses and be gone before they get here. Leave me and save yourself. He looked at her like she'd suggested something obscene. That's not how this works. How what works? Family. You don't abandon family. You barely know me. Doesn't matter. You're blood. That means something. Lillian thought about her father, who was also blood, who'd known her all her life. Not to everyone. Cole's expression softened slightly. Then they're doing it wrong. On the morning of the third day, Tom spotted them. Riders, he called from where he'd been keeping watch near the tree line. 4 of them, coming up the south trail. Cole grabbed his rifle. Lillian, loft, now. She scrambled up the ladder, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. From the small window, she could see what Tom had seen, 4 men on horseback, moving slowly through the deep snow. The man in front was massive, broad-shouldered, and thick-necked. Even from a distance, Lillian could see the scar across his throat. Pike. Cole positioned himself at the main window, rifle resting on the sill. Tom had already disappeared into the barn. The rider stopped about 50 yards from the cabin. Pike dismounted, his boots sinking into snow up to his knees. He said something to the other 3 men, who spread out slightly, flanking him. Cole Maddox! Pike's voice was rough, damaged. The scar on his throat wasn't just for show. We need to talk. Cole didn't respond. I know you're in there, and I know you've got Charles Harrow's daughter. We just want to talk. Still nothing. Pike took a few steps closer. Look, we can do this easy or hard. Easy is you send the girl out. We have a conversation. Maybe we work something out. Hard is we come in there and drag her out. Your choice. From the loft, Lillian could see Cole's finger resting against the trigger guard. Not threatening, just ready. What kind of conversation? Cole called out. Pike stopped. The kind where we discuss Mr. Harrow's debt and how it's going to be repaid. His debt was to me. I collected. Transactions done. See, that's where you're wrong. Mr. Harrow had an agreement with our organization. That agreement predates any supposed debt to you. Then take it up with Harrow. We would, but he seems to have skipped town. Funny how that happened right after you showed up. This was news to Lillian. Her father had run? Where? With what money? Pike continued. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to send out the girl. We're going to take her back to Denver where she belongs. And you're going to walk away from this alive. See? Everybody wins. Except her. The girl's none of your concern. She's my wife. That makes her my concern. Pike laughed, the sound wet and ugly. Your wife? Come on, Maddox, we both know that's bullshit. You married her to void the contract. Clever. But it doesn't change the facts. She was promised to us. We've got buyers waiting, expensive buyers who don't like being disappointed. Lillian's stomach turned. Buyers? They were talking about her like she was livestock. She's not going anywhere, Cole said. Pike's expression hardened. Then I guess we're doing this the hard way. He drew his gun. Everything happened at once. Tom fired from the barn, the shot hitting one of Pike's men in the shoulder and spinning him off his horse. Cole's rifle barked, kicking up snow near Pike's feet. The other 2 men scattered, one diving behind his horse, the other sprinting for the tree line. Pike ran for cover behind a snowdrift, returning fire. His bullets punched through the shutters, sending splinters flying. Stay down! Cole shouted. Lillian pressed herself flat against the loft floor, her rifle clutched to her chest. Below, Cole was moving from window to window, firing controlled shots. Another volley hit the cabin. Wood cracked, glass shattered. One bullet came through the wall near the loft window, missing Lillian by inches. She forced herself to the window, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the rifle. Through the opening, she could see one of Pike's men circling toward the barn, trying to get an angle on Tom. She raised the rifle, pressed the stock against her shoulder like Cole had taught her, and tried to steady her breathing. The man was maybe 30 yards away. An easy shot if she'd been practicing on a tree that wasn't shooting back. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard, bruising her shoulder. The shot went wide, hitting snow 5 feet to the man's left, but it made him turn, made him see her in the window. He raised his own rifle. Lillian dropped below the sill as bullets tore through the wood above her head. Her ears were ringing. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Lillian!" Cole's voice. "You hit?" "No." "Then keep shooting." She forced herself back to the window. The man was closer now, maybe 20 yards, using the trees for cover. She fired again. Missed again. He was almost to the barn. Tom appeared in the barn doorway and dropped the man with a single shot. The man crumpled into the snow and didn't move, but the distraction had cost them. The other man, the one who'd made it to the trees, had circled around. He was at the cabin's back wall now, out of sight from the main windows. "Cole!" Lillian shouted. "Behind the cabin!" Cole swore and moved toward the back, but he was too slow. The back door exploded inward, kicked off its hinges. The man came through in a rush, gun raised. Cole was too far away, couldn't get the angle. The man's gun swung toward him. Lillian didn't think, didn't aim, just pointed her rifle down through the loft opening and pulled the trigger. The bullet caught the man in the leg. He went down hard, screaming, his gun skittering across the floor. Cole was on him in seconds, kicking the gun away, slamming the rifle butt into the man's head. The screaming stopped. "Good shot," Cole said, breathing hard. Lillian stared at the man on the floor, at the blood spreading across the wood, at her rifle, still smoking. She'd shot someone. She'd actually shot someone. "Lillian." Cole's voice cut through her shock. "Stay with me. It's not over." He was right. Through the front window, she could see Pike and the wounded man retreating toward the horses. Tom fired from the barn, keeping them pinned. "They're running!" Tom called. But Pike wasn't running. He'd grabbed something from his saddlebag, a bottle with a rag stuffed in the neck. "Fire!" Lillian shouted. "He's got fire!" Pike struck a match. Cole aimed carefully and fired. The bullet shattered the bottle in Pike's hand. Liquid splashed across his coat and the snow around him. Pike looked down at his soaked coat, at the match still burning in his other hand, and his eyes went wide. He threw the match away from himself, but it landed in the spilled liquid. Flames roared up instantly, catching his coat, his pants. Pike screamed and ran, a human torch, stumbling through the snow. He made it maybe 10 yards before he fell. The wounded man tried to help him, tried to smother the flames with snow, but it was too late. Pike thrashed once, twice, then went still. The wounded man stared at Pike's smoking body, then at the cabin, then at the trees where his dead companion lay. He made his choice, mounted the nearest horse, and rode hard for the trail, not looking back. Tom let him go. Silence fell over Shadow Ridge, broken only by the crackle of dying flames and the ringing in Lillian's ears. Cole moved to the man on the cabin floor, the one Lillian had shot. He checked for a pulse, found none. The rifle butt to his head had finished what the bullet had started. "He's dead," Cole said quietly. Lillian climbed down the ladder on legs that barely supported her. She stared at the body, at the blood, at the hole her bullet had made. "I killed him," she whispered. "No, I did. Your shot stopped him. Mine killed him." "Don't lie to me." Cole met her eyes. "I'm not. You wounded him. I made the choice to end it. That's on me. But you saved my life." He gripped her shoulders, forced her to look at him. "He was going to shoot me. You stopped him. That's all that matters." Lillian wanted to believe him, wanted to push the guilt away, to accept that she'd done what she had to do, but all she could see was the man's face in the moment before she pulled the trigger. Tom came in from the barn, rifle still in hand. He looked at the body, at Pike's still smoking remains visible through the door, at the bullet holes in the walls. "Well," he said, "that could have gone worse." Cole barked a laugh, short and sharp. "Your definition of worse needs work. We're alive. They're not. I call that a win. There's still one out there. He'll go back to the Covenant, tell them what happened. Let him. They just lost 4 men trying to take one girl. Maybe they'll decide she's more trouble than she's worth. Or maybe they'll come back with more." Tom shrugged. "Problem for another day." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion was setting in. The adrenaline that had carried them through the fight was fading, leaving them all hollow and shaking. "Help me with the bodies," Cole said. We can't leave them here. The two men dragged Pike's charred corpse and the other dead man away from the cabin, into the trees where scavengers would find them. It was grim work, made grimmer by the fact that Lillian had killed one of them. She sat at the table, staring at her hands. They were steady now. That seemed wrong somehow. Shouldn't they be shaking? Shouldn't she be falling apart? But she just felt numb, empty. When Cole and Tom returned, they boarded up the broken door and began cleaning. Blood had to be scrubbed from the floor. Broken glass swept up. Bullet holes assessed for damage. Through it all, Lillian sat motionless. Finally, as the sun was setting, Tom announced he'd better head back to his place before full dark. Cole walked him out to his horse. Lillian heard their voices, low and serious, but couldn't make out the words. Didn't particularly care to. When Cole came back in, he sat across from her at the table. "You should eat something," he said. "Not hungry." "Eat anyway." "I can't." "Lillian, I killed a man, Cole." Her voice cracked. "I shot him and he died, and I can't just eat dinner and pretend that's normal. It's not normal. It's never normal. But you did what you had to do." "Did I? Or did I do what you made me do? You taught me to shoot. You set up this whole trap. Maybe if we'd just run, we'd be dead, or worse, you'd be on your way to Denver and a brothel. You don't know that." "Yeah, I do. Pike wasn't bluffing. You heard what he said. They had buyers waiting." Lillian wrapped her arms around herself. "I can still see his face." "I know." "Does it get easier?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. "No, but you learn to carry it. You learn to live with what you've done." "How?" "By remembering why you did it. By knowing that sometimes there's no good choice, just the one that lets you sleep at night." "I don't think I'm going to sleep tonight." "Then I'll stay up with you." And he did. They sat by the fire as darkness fell, not talking, just present. Cole whittled another spoon from a piece of wood Tom had brought. Lillian watched the flames and tried not to think about Pike burning in the snow. Around midnight, exhaustion finally claimed her. She climbed to the loft and lay down fully clothed, expecting nightmares. Instead, she slept deep and dreamless, her body shutting down what her mind couldn't process. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window and the smell of coffee was drifting up from below. Cole was at the stove, cooking eggs that must have been from their chickens. He looked up when she climbed down. "Morning." "Morning," she echoed. He set a plate in front of her. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. "We need to talk about what's next," Cole said. "I know. That man who got away will tell the Covenant what happened. They might send more people, or they might decide you're too much trouble and walk away. There's no way to know." "What do you think they'll do?" "Honestly, I think they'll come back. Not right away. They'll plan better this time, bring more men, wait until we let our guard down. So we can't stay here. Not forever, maybe not even for very long." Lillian set down her fork. "Where would we go?" "I've been thinking about that. Tom knows people in Wyoming, ranchers who don't ask questions. We could head there, change our names, start over." "As what? Your actual wife?" "If that's what it takes to keep you safe." Lillian studied his face, looking for any sign that he wanted this, that she was anything more to him than an obligation. She found nothing but tired determination. "I won't trap you in a real marriage," she said. "That's not fair to either of us. Fair went out the window when your father sold you to criminals. Cole, listen to me." He leaned forward. "I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if we'll be running the rest of our lives, or if the Covenant will eventually give up. But I know this. You're not facing it alone. Not as long as I'm breathing. Why? Because we're family? Because it's the right thing to do. And because—" He stopped, seeming to wrestle with something. "Because you're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A spoiled town girl who'd fall apart the first time things got hard. Someone I'd have to drag kicking and screaming through every step. And what am I instead? Someone who learns, who fights, who shot a man to save my life and then had to live with it." He paused. "You're stronger than you think, Lillian. Stronger than Red Hollow ever let you be." The words settled over her like a blanket. Not warm exactly, but not cold either, just there, true. "I don't feel strong," she said. "Nobody does. That's the secret. We're all just pretending and hoping it's enough." Lillian almost smiled. Almost. Outside, a crow called. The same one from yesterday, maybe. Or a different one. Did it matter? Life continued. The sun rose. The world turned. And somewhere out there, men were making plans to come back and finish what they'd started. But for now, in this moment, she was alive. And that would have to be enough. 2 weeks passed in careful vigilance. Cole set up a watch rotation. 2 hours on, 4 hours off, rotating through the night. They slept in shifts, always one person awake with a rifle within reach. Lillian learned to sleep light. The smallest sound would jolt her awake, a branch cracking under snow, wind rattling the shutters, the horses shifting in the barn. Each time her heart would race, her hand would find the knife under her pillow, and she'd lie frozen until she heard Cole's quiet, "All clear," from below. It was wearing them both down. She could see it in the shadows under Cole's eyes, in the way his hand would drift to his gun at every unexpected noise. They were running on coffee and adrenaline and the knowledge that relaxing could get them killed. On the 15th day, Tom arrived again. "Got news," he said, stamping snow from his boots. "Some of it good, most of it not." Cole poured coffee without a word. They'd developed a shorthand over the weeks. Less talking, more understanding. "Good news first," Tom continued. "That man who ran? Turns out he told his story to anyone who'd listen. How 4 armed men got beaten back by 2 people in a barn. How Pike burned to death trying to torch the place. The Covenant's not looking so fearsome right now." "That's not good news," Cole said. "That's them losing face. Makes them more dangerous, not less." "Let me finish. The other part is your father-in-law surfaced." Lillian's head snapped up. "Where?" "San Francisco. Tom got word from a contact there. Charles Harrow's been asking around about passage to China. Seems he liquidated everything he could and is planning to disappear." "China," Lillian repeated. The word felt foreign in her mouth. "He's running to China." "Can't say I blame him. The Covenant put a price on his head. $500. Dead or alive? Though I suspect they prefer alive so they can take their time with him." Cole was quiet, his expression unreadable. "How much did he get for selling everything?" "Maybe 3,000. Enough to buy passage and start over somewhere they can't reach him." 3,000, Lillian said slowly. "He sold me to save himself, and now he's running away with $3,000. The anger that had been simmering for weeks suddenly boiled over. She stood so fast her chair toppled backward. "That son of a bitch, that coward. He ruined my life, sold me like property, and now he gets to escape? He gets to start over?" "Lillian," Cole started. No, that's not how this ends. He doesn't get to walk away clean while I'm stuck here waiting for criminals to come kill me." "What do you want to do about it?" Tom asked, and something in his tone made her look at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean, San Francisco's not that far. Weeks travel if you push hard. Man like Charles Harrow, running scared with a bag of money, he's not going to be careful. He's going to make mistakes." "You're suggesting we go after him," Cole said. "I'm suggesting that he's got $3,000 that rightfully should go toward fixing the mess he made. And I'm suggesting that maybe the Covenant would be interested to know his exact location, for the right price." Lillian stared at Tom. "You want to sell him out?" "I want to give you options. You can sit here and wait for the next attack. You can run to Wyoming and hope they never find you, or you can take control, get the money, make a deal, end this on your terms." Cole shook his head. "It's too risky. San Francisco's a big city, lots of Covenant people there. We'd be walking into their territory." "True. But they're not expecting you to come to them. Everyone runs from the Covenant. Nobody runs toward them." "There's a reason for that." "Is there? Or is that just what people tell themselves because they're too scared to fight back?" The words hung in the air. Lillian looked at Cole, saw him wrestling with it. He'd built his entire life around staying away from trouble, from people, from risk. And here was Tom suggesting they dive headfirst into the worst of it. "It's suicide," Cole said finally. "Maybe. Or maybe it's the only way this ends without you two spending the rest of your lives looking over your shoulders." Tom stood. "Think about it. I've got contacts in San Francisco, people who owe me favors. I can get you in, get you to Harrow, get you out. But you have to decide soon. Charles won't wait forever." He left them with that, riding back down the mountain before Cole could argue further. The cabin felt smaller after he was gone. Lillian paced while Cole sat at the table, turning his coffee cup in slow circles. "He's right," she said finally. "He's crazy." "Maybe. But he's also right. We can't live like this forever. Always waiting, always afraid." "Better afraid than dead." "Is it?" She stopped pacing to face him. "Cole, I shot a man 2 weeks ago. I killed someone. And every night since, I lie awake wondering when the next ones will come. How many I'll have to kill. How long before I lose count." Her voice cracked. "I can't do this forever. I'll break." Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw her own exhaustion reflected in his eyes. "If we do this," he said slowly, "we do it smart. We plan every step. We don't improvise. And if at any point it feels wrong, we abort. Agreed?" "Agreed." "And Lillian? Your father's a piece of shit, but he's still your father. If we find him, if we take that money, there's a good chance the Covenant will kill him. You need to be ready for that." She thought about Charles Harrow, about the man who'd raised her, who'd taught her to read, who'd held her when her mother died. Then she thought about the man who'd sold her to save himself, who'd run away with his blood money while she fought for her life. "I'm ready," she said. They spent 3 days preparing. Cole made a list of everything they'd need: weapons, ammunition, travel supplies, money for bribes. Tom returned with maps of San Francisco, information about where Charles was likely staying, and the names of people who could help. "The Covenant's headquarters is in the financial district," Tom explained, spreading a map across the table. "Big building, lots of guards. You don't want to go anywhere near it." "Where's Harrow?" Cole asked. "Last I heard, he was staying at a boarding house near the docks, a place called the Meridian. Cheap, crowded, easy to disappear in. He's using the name John Miller." "Original," Lillian muttered. "Desperate men aren't creative. Now, here's the play. You get to San Francisco, you find Harrow, you take the money. Then you go to a man named Vincent Chen. He runs a gambling house in Chinatown. Tell him Tom Fletcher sent you, and that you have information about Charles Harrow's location." "Why would he care?" Cole asked. "Because Chen hates the Covenant. They've been muscling in on his territory for years. He'd love nothing more than to embarrass them by finding Harrow first. He'll broker a deal. You give them Harrow's location, they leave you alone. Maybe even pay you for the information. And if Chen decides to just take the money and kill us? He won't. Chen's a businessman. He values reputation over quick cash. You make a deal with him, he'll honor it. Just don't cross him." Cole studied the map, his finger tracing routes through the city. "We'll need a way out if things go wrong. Escape routes. Safe houses." "Already arranged. I've got 3 places you can hole up if you need to. Here, here, and here." Tom marked the locations. "Stocked with supplies. Nobody knows about them except me and you." Over the next day, they gathered what they'd need. Cole cleaned and oiled his guns, packed ammunition, counted money. Lillian sorted through the clothes Tom had brought. City clothes this time, not workwear. A dress that was plain but respectable. A coat that didn't smell like smoke and goats. She looked at herself in the small mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Thinner than she'd been in Red Hollow. Harder around the eyes. Hair longer and wilder. She looked like someone who'd survived something. Because she had. The night before they left, Lillian couldn't sleep. She climbed down from the loft to find Cole sitting by the fire, cleaning a pistol. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Not much point. We leave at dawn." She sat across from him, watching his hands work. They were steady, confident. Everything about Cole was steady, she'd realized. Even when he was scared or uncertain, he moved with purpose. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." "Do you regret it? Coming to Red Hollow? Marrying me? All of this?" Cole set down the pistol. "You want the truth?" "Always." "Sometimes. When I'm tired or scared or cleaning blood off the floor, yeah. I wonder what would have happened if I just stayed here. Let your mother's letters sit in that box and minded my own business." The honesty stung, but Lillian appreciated it more than empty comfort would have. "But then I think about you in some Denver brothel," Cole continued. "Broken, used up, dead inside. And I know I made the right choice, even if it cost me everything. Why does it matter so much to you? You said family, but we're barely family. We shared a mother we both barely knew. Cole was quiet for a long moment. You know what my mother's last words to me were? Lillian shook her head. Take care of your sister. I was 9 years old, being sold to a cattle outfit, and she grabbed my hand and said, take care of your sister. I told her I would. I promised. But you couldn't. You were just a kid. Doesn't matter. I made a promise, and I broke it. Your mother died alone while I was in Deadwood shooting people and robbing wagons. By the time those letters found me, she'd been gone 3 years. He picked up the pistol again, his jaw tight. I can't fix that. Can't go back and keep that promise. But I can keep you safe. I can do for you what I couldn't do for her. Lillian felt something shift in her chest. This isn't about me at all, is it? It's about her. About guilt. Maybe. Does it matter? I don't know. Maybe not. She stood. For what it's worth, I think she'd be proud of you. Cole laughed, short and bitter. I doubt that. But thanks anyway. Lillian went back to the loft, but she didn't sleep. Just lay there thinking about mothers and daughters and promises kept and broken until the sky began to lighten. They left Shadow Ridge at first light. The cabin stood silent behind them, smoke trailing from the chimney where they'd left a low fire burning. The animals had enough food and water for a week. Tom would check on them. Everything else they carried with them, guns, money, supplies, and the weight of what they were about to do. The journey to San Francisco took 6 days of hard riding. They followed Tom's route, avoiding main roads and towns where possible. At night, they slept in their bedrolls under the stars, taking turns on watch. On the 3rd day, they saw riders in the distance, 3 men on a ridge about a mile away. Cole pulled them into a grove of trees and they waited, barely breathing, until the riders passed. Could have been anyone, Lillian said. Could have been, but I'm not taking chances. They saw no one else after that, but the encounter left them both jumpy. Every stranger became a potential threat. Every town they passed through felt like enemy territory. San Francisco hit Lillian like a wall of sound and smell and chaos. After months in the mountains, the city was overwhelming. Crowds of people, horses and wagons everywhere. Buildings stacked on top of each other, reaching for the sky. The salt smell of the bay mixing with smoke and sewage and 1,000 cooking fires. Stay close, Cole said, leading their horses through the crowded streets. They found one of Tom's safe houses first, a room above a Chinese laundry in an alley off Market Street. The proprietor, an ancient woman with hands like gnarled roots, took Tom's letter and led them upstairs without a word. The room was small but clean, with a bed, a chair, and a window overlooking the alley. The old woman pointed to a loose board in the floor where supplies were hidden: food, water, ammunition, and a map of the city. You stay quiet. You no trouble. You safe here, she said in broken English. You trouble, you leave. Understand? Understood, Cole said. She left them alone. Cole studied the map while Lillian looked out the window. The street below was packed with people: Chinese immigrants, sailors, prostitutes, merchants. A different world from Red Hollow, from Shadow Ridge, from anything she'd ever known. The Meridian's about a mile from here, Cole said, near the waterfront. We should scout it first, see if Harrow's actually there. And if he is, then we figure out how to get to him without being seen. They waited until evening, when the streets were even more crowded, then made their way to the docks. The Meridian was exactly as Tom had described, a 3-story building that had seen better days, paint peeling, windows cracked, the kind of place where nobody asked questions. Cole went in first while Lillian waited across the street. He came out 10 minutes later. He's here, room 12, 2nd floor. Clerk said he keeps to himself, pays in cash. Hasn't gone out in 3 days. He's scared, Lillian said. He should be. Question is, how do we get to him? They watched the building for an hour. People came and went. Sailors looking for a bed, workers stumbling in drunk, women in too much makeup heading upstairs with men who wouldn't remember their faces in the morning. Finally, Cole pointed. Back entrance, no guard. Stairs lead straight to the 2nd floor. When? Tonight. Late. When most people are asleep. They returned to the safe house and waited for midnight. Lillian tried to eat but couldn't. Her stomach was tied in knots. In a few hours, she'd be face to face with her father for the first time since the wedding. What would she say to him? What could she say? Cole checked his guns for the third time. You ready for this? No, but we're doing it anyway. If he fights, if he calls for help, we have to leave him. We can't risk getting caught. I know. And Lillian, whatever he says to you, whatever he promises, remember why we're here. We take the money and we leave. That's all. I won't forget. At midnight, they made their way back to the Meridian. The streets were quieter now, though not empty. San Francisco never fully slept. The back entrance was unlocked, just as they'd hoped. They slipped inside and climbed the stairs, moving silently. The hallway on the second floor was dim, lit by a single oil lamp. Room 12 was at the end. Cole drew his pistol. Lillian's hand found the knife in her boot, not the one Marianne had given her, but a better one Cole had bought in a town along the way. Cole knocked, soft, deliberate. No answer. He knocked again. Who's there? A voice from inside. Rough with sleep and fear, her father's voice. Maintenance, Cole said, pitching his voice lower. Water leak. Need to check the room. A long pause, then footsteps. The sound of something being moved, furniture blocking the door, probably. The door opened a crack, and Charles Harrow's face appeared in the gap, pale and haggard. His eyes widened when he saw them. No, he whispered. No, you can't be. Cole slammed his shoulder into the door, knocking Charles backward. They were inside in seconds. The door closed and locked behind them. Charles scrambled backward, his hand reaching for something on the nightstand. Don't, Cole said, his gun aimed steady. Charles froze. He looked worse than Lillian remembered. Thinner, older, his hair gone almost completely gray. He wore a nightshirt that hung off his frame like a shroud. Lillian, he breathed. What are you doing here? She stepped forward into the lamplight. What do you think? You can't be here. If the Covenant finds out, the Covenant is why we're here, among other reasons. Charles's eyes darted between them. Please, please, I can explain. I don't want your explanations. Lillian's voice was cold. I want the money. What money? Don't play stupid. The $3,000 you got from selling everything, from selling me. That money's for passage to buy. I don't care. You owe me. You owe me for every lie you told, every promise you broke, for selling me to save your own coward skin. Charles sank onto the bed, his face crumbling. I didn't have a choice. They would have killed me. So you let them take me instead. Your own daughter. Cole, I thought you'd keep her safe. That was the deal. There was no deal, Cole said. I made that up. The debt was fake. All of it was fake to get her away from the Covenant before they came to collect. The color drained from Charles's face. What? Your daughter was 3 days from being shipped to a Denver brothel. That's what your agreement meant. I stepped in and stopped it. I didn't know. They told me she'd be married to a businessman, someone respectable. And you believed them? Lillian's laugh was sharp. You believed that a criminal organization wanted your daughter for some respectable marriage? How stupid are you? Charles put his head in his hands. I didn't know what else to do. The debts were too much. The mine was failing. I was desperate. So you sold me. I saved you. You saved yourself. Lillian's control shattered. You let Mother die while you gambled and borrowed and made deals with criminals. You destroyed everything she built. And when it all came crashing down, you didn't face it like a man. You sold your daughter and ran. Lillian, where's the money? Charles hesitated. Cole cocked his pistol. Last chance. Under the bed, Charles whispered. Canvas bag. Lillian knelt and pulled out the bag. Inside were neat stacks of bills. She didn't count them, just closed the bag and stood. What are you going to do? Charles asked. We're going to Vincent Chen. We're going to tell him exactly where you are. And we're going to trade that information for our freedom. No, please, they'll kill me. Good. The word came out flat, final, and Lillian meant it. Charles stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. You've changed, he said. You made me change. You and the Covenant and everyone who thought they could use me and throw me away. Well, I'm done being used. She turned to leave, but Charles grabbed her arm. Lillian, please. I'm your father. She looked at his hand, then at his face. No, you're the man who used to be my father. That man died the day you sold me. She pulled free and walked out. Cole followed, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, Charles, I hope they make it slow. They were back on the street before the shaking started. Lillian leaned against a wall, the bag of money clutched to her chest, her whole body trembling. You all right? Cole asked. I told him I hoped he'd die. I heard. I meant it. I know. Does that make me a terrible person? Cole considered the question seriously. Maybe. Or maybe it just makes you human. They made their way back to the safe house as the first light of dawn began to color the sky. The old woman let them in without comment, though her eyes lingered on the canvas bag. Upstairs, Lillian counted the money. $3,047. A fortune. Enough to start over anywhere in the world. Blood money, her father's life, translated into neat stacks of bills. What do we do now? She asked. Now we find Vincent Chen, make the deal, and then we disappear. And my father? That's up to the Covenant, and up to him. Lillian thought about Charles Harrow in that dingy room, knowing his daughter had just signed his death warrant. Part of her felt sick, but most of her felt nothing at all. Maybe that made her a monster, or maybe it just made her a survivor. Let's go see Chen, she said. Cole nodded. Get some rest first. We'll go tonight. But Lillian knew she wouldn't sleep. Not with her father's face burned into her memory. Not with the weight of what she'd done settling into her bones. She'd crossed a line tonight, become something she'd never thought she could be. And there was no going back. Vincent Chen's gambling house occupied the basement of a restaurant in Chinatown, down a narrow staircase that smelled of incense and opium and something else Lillian couldn't identify. Cole went first, one hand on his pistol, the other holding the canvas bag. At the bottom of the stairs, two men blocked their path. Both were Chinese, both armed with hatchets tucked into their belts. We're here to see Vincent Chen, Cole said. Tom Fletcher sent us. The guards exchanged a look. One of them disappeared through a beaded curtain, while the other watched them with eyes that missed nothing. They waited. Lillian could hear sounds from beyond the curtain, the click of tiles, low voices speaking in Cantonese, occasional laughter. The gambling house was doing good business. The guard returned and gestured for them to follow. Beyond the curtain was a large room thick with smoke. Men sat at tables playing fan-tan and pei gao, money changing hands with every turn of the tiles. Women in silk dresses moved between tables carrying tea and wine. Nobody looked up when Lillian and Cole entered. Vincent Chen sat at a table in the back, a cup of tea in front of him, watching a game of mahjong being played by four old men. He was younger than Lillian expected, maybe 40, dressed in an expensive Western suit with a gold watch chain. His face was smooth, unreadable. Tom Fletcher's friends, he said without looking at them. His English was perfect, unaccented. I wondered when you'd come. You knew we were in the city? Cole asked. I make it my business to know who enters Chinatown, especially when they're carrying Tom Fletcher's recommendation. Chen gestured to two empty chairs. Sit. Would you like tea? We're fine, Cole said, but he sat. Lillian followed his lead. Chen finally looked at them, his gaze settling on Lillian with interest. You're the girl, the one the Covenant wanted. You don't look like what I expected. What did you expect? Someone softer, more frightened, but you have the eyes of someone who's seen things, done things. He smiled slightly. Good. Soft people don't survive in this city. We're not here to survive, Lillian said. We're here to make a deal. Ah, direct. I appreciate that. Tom said you had information about Charles Harrow. Cole set the canvas bag on the table. We've got more than information. We've got his money. $3,000 he stole from people in Red Hollow before he ran. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. You took it from him? Last night. He's staying at the Meridian, room 12. Probably still there, though he'll bolt soon when he realizes we're not coming back. And you want what in exchange for this information? We want the Covenant off our backs, Lillian said. Permanently. We want them to know that I'm not available. Not now, not ever. That trying to take me will cost them more than I'm worth. Chen sipped his tea, considering. The Covenant doesn't like being told no. They also don't like losing money and men. We've already cost them 4 people and whatever they paid my father for his debt. How much more are they willing to lose over one woman? That depends on the woman. And on principle. The covenant operates on fear. If they let you walk away, others might get ideas. Cole leaned forward. Then make it worth their while. Tell them you brokered a deal. That we paid you to negotiate our release. Give them Charles Harrow as compensation. They get their revenge on him, save face by claiming they made a successful arrangement, and everyone walks away clean. Chen was quiet for a long moment. You've thought this through. We've had time. How much are you offering? 500, half the bag. Not enough. Charles Harrow humiliated the covenant, made them look like fools. They'll want blood, not money. They can have both. We give you Harrow's location now, tonight. You take the 500 and present it as a negotiation fee. The covenant gets Harrow and gets paid. We disappear and never surface anywhere they operate. Clean transaction. Chen set down his teacup. You're asking me to put my reputation on the line, to convince dangerous people to accept terms they don't want to accept. That's worth more than 500. How much? 1,500. And Harrow, Cole's jaw tightened. That's half our stake. That's the cost of freedom. Take it or leave it. Lillian put her hand on Cole's arm. Take it. Lillian, take it. We can live on 1,500. We can't live looking over our shoulders forever. Cole stared at her, then at Chen. Finally, he nodded. Fine. 1,500. But we want proof the deal's done. Written confirmation that the covenant considers the matter settled. Done. Give me 3 days. We don't have 3 days. Then you shouldn't have come to me. Chen's voice went cold. I need time to make contact, to present the offer, to negotiate. 3 days. You have my word that during that time, no one in Chinatown will touch you. After that, he shrugged. Either we have a deal or you run. Cole counted out $1,500 and slid it across the table. 3 days. Chen pocketed the money without counting it. The Meridian, room 12. You're certain? We were there last night. He's not going anywhere, too scared. Good. Fear makes people predictable. Chen stood. I'll send word to your safe house when I have an answer. Until then, stay out of sight. The Covenant has people all over this city. They left the gambling house and made their way back through Chinatown's crowded streets. Lillian's heart was racing. They'd just bet everything on Vincent Chen keeping his word. If he decided to simply take their money and sell them out to the Covenant, you think he'll honor the deal? She asked when they were safely back in the alley. I think Tom trusts him, and I trust Tom. That's not the same as trusting Chen. No, but it's all we've got. The next 3 days were the longest of Lillian's life. They stayed in the room above the laundry, only leaving for food and water. Cole cleaned his guns obsessively. Lillian paced until she wore a path in the floorboards. On the second day, they heard commotion in the streets. Shouting, the sound of many feet running. Cole looked out the window. Fire, he said, down by the docks. Lillian joined him. Smoke was rising from the direction of the waterfront, thick and black. The Meridian's down there, she said. Yeah. They watched the smoke rise for an hour. When it finally began to clear, Cole went out to investigate. He came back 2 hours later, his face grim. The Meridian burned, started in one of the rooms on the second floor, spread fast, buildings gone. Lillian felt something cold settle in her stomach. Room 12? That's what people are saying. Body inside, burned so bad they couldn't identify it. But there was a canvas bag, empty, next to the body. Her father, dead, burned like Pike had burned. She waited for grief, for regret, for something, but all she felt was a distant numbness. Chen, move fast, Cole said. Good. Lillian, don't tell me I should feel something. He made his choices. This is where they led. Cole didn't argue, just sat beside her and waited. On the evening of the third day, one of Chen's guards arrived. He handed Cole a sealed envelope and left without a word. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a letter on expensive paper written in elegant script, to whom it may concern. The matter of Lillian Harrow is hereby considered resolved. All debts are paid. All contracts are void. Any further action against the aforementioned individual or her associates will be considered a breach of agreement and dealt with accordingly. Signed, the covenant. The second document was simpler. A marriage certificate. Official, stamped, dated the day of their wedding in Red Hollow. It's real, Lillian said, studying it. The marriage. It's legally binding. Always was. But now it's recognized by the covenant. That's what matters. So we're actually married. Looks that way. They stared at the documents, at proof that they were bound together not just by circumstance but by law, by negotiation, by blood and fire. What do we do now? Lillian asked. That's up to you. Don't put this on me. We're in this together. Cole set down the papers. All right, here's what I think. We've got $1,500. That's enough to go anywhere, start anything. We can get this marriage annulled if you want. You can take your half and disappear. Build a life somewhere the covenant can't reach you. And you? I'll probably go back to Shadow Ridge. It's home, for better or worse. Alone. I've been alone before. Lillian looked at him. This man who'd saved her, protected her, taught her to survive. Who'd become something more than an uncle, more than a protector. Something she didn't have a name for. What if I don't want to disappear, she said quietly. Then what do you want? I want... She struggled for the words. I want to stop running. I want to build something that's mine. Something nobody can take away or sell or burn down. And I think... She met his eyes. I think I want to do that with you. If you'll have me. Cole was very still. As what? My actual wife? As your partner. Your equal. Not because we're forced to be together, but because we choose it. Lillian, you're 23 years old. You could have any life you want. You don't have to tie yourself to a former outlaw living in the middle of nowhere. You're right. I don't have to. But maybe I want to. Maybe I've learned that comfort and safety and respectability aren't worth much if you're not free. And I'm more free on that mountain with you than I ever was in Red Hollow. You say that now, but winter's hard up there. Lonely. You might change your mind. Then I'll tell you. And we'll figure it out. But Cole... She took his hand. I've spent my whole life being told what to do, who to be, what I'm worth. I'm done with that. For the first time, I get to choose. And I choose this. I choose you. Cole's fingers tightened around hers. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He pulled her close, and they sat like that for a long time. Two people who'd survived hell together, now facing whatever came next. They left San Francisco the next morning. The city disappeared behind them as they rode east, back toward the mountains. Neither of them looked back. They stopped in Sacramento long enough to buy supplies. Then Nevada. Then Colorado. The landscape growing more familiar with each mile. When they finally saw Shadow Ridge in the distance, Lillian felt something unexpected. Relief. The cabin looked small and rough from the trail, smoke trailing from the chimney where Tom had kept the fire going. But it looked like home. Tom met them in the clearing, grinning. Wondered if you'd make it back. Heard rumors about a fire in San Francisco. Dead man in a boarding house. Figured that was your handiwork. Chen's handiwork, Cole corrected. We just provided the information. Smart. Chen's good people. For a criminal. Tom looked between them. So, did it work? Cole showed him the documents. Tom whistled low. Well, I'll be damned. You actually did it. Got the covenant off your back and walked away with cash in your pocket. Half our cash, Lillian said. But yeah, that's more than most people manage. So what now? You two sticking together? Cole glanced at Lillian. Looks that way. Good. About damn time. Tom clapped Cole on the shoulder. Cabin's in good shape. Animals are fed. I'll leave you to settle in. After Tom left, Lillian and Cole stood in the clearing, looking at the cabin that had been a prison and was now a choice. You ready? Cole asked. Ready. They went inside. Everything was as they'd left it, the table, the chairs, the fireplace. Lillian climbed to the loft and looked at the bed where she'd spent so many nights alone and afraid. That woman was gone now. The girl from Red Hollow who'd walked down an aisle in her mother's yellowed dress, who'd believed she was being sacrificed. In her place was someone else, someone harder, stronger, Someone who'd killed to survive, who'd confronted her father and walked away, who'd negotiated with criminals and won. She climbed back down to find Cole starting dinner. "We need to talk about how this works," he said. "This marriage, if we're really doing this. All right? I'm not going to be a traditional husband. I don't know how, and I won't pretend to be something I'm not." "Good. I don't want traditional. Traditional got me sold to criminals." Cole almost smiled. "Fair point. So what do you want?" "I want partnership. Real partnership. Equal say in decisions, equal work, equal respect." "Done. And I want honesty. No more secrets, no more half-truths. If something's wrong, we talk about it." "Agreed. Anything else?" Lillian hesitated. "I want separate beds, for now. Maybe that changes someday, maybe it doesn't. But I need time to figure out who I am before I can be anyone's wife in that way." Cole nodded. "The loft's yours as long as you want it." "Thank you." They ate dinner in comfortable silence. After, Cole went to check on the horses while Lillian washed the dishes. Ordinary tasks, domestic routines, but chosen freely, which made all the difference. That night, lying in the loft, Lillian heard Cole moving around below. The creak of floorboards, the sound of wood being added to the fire, the quiet settling of the cabin. For the first time in months, she felt safe. The weeks that followed fell into a new rhythm. Lillian and Cole worked the land together, making improvements to the cabin, expanding the garden plot for spring planting. Tom visited weekly, bringing news and supplies. One afternoon in early April, as snow was finally beginning to melt, Tom arrived with a newspaper from Denver. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said, handing it to Cole. The headline read, "Covenant Leadership Arrested in Federal Raid." Cole read it aloud. Federal marshals, acting on information from a confidential source, raided the Covenant's headquarters in Denver's financial district. 7 men were arrested on charges including kidnapping, human trafficking, and racketeering. Additional arrests are expected. "Vincent Chen," Lillian said. "He didn't just broker a deal, he burned them down." "Looks that way. Man doesn't do anything halfway." Tom grinned. "Means you're really free now. Covenant's finished." Lillian took the paper, reading the rest of the article. Names she didn't recognize, crimes that made her stomach turn. And buried in the second paragraph, a mention of Charles Harrow, deceased, whose testimony recorded before his death had provided crucial evidence. Her father's final act. Maybe not redemption, but something. "You all right?" Cole asked. "Yeah, I think I am." After Tom left, Lillian walked to the edge of the clearing, looking out over the valley. Spring was coming. The air was warmer, the snow melting, green beginning to show through brown. New beginnings. She heard Cole approach but didn't turn. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. "I was thinking about my mother, about the promise you made to her." "I broke that promise." "No, you kept it. Just took you a while." She turned to face him. "She wanted you to take care of your sister. You couldn't, but you took care of me. Her daughter, that counts." "Maybe." "It does. And I think," her voice caught, "I think she'd be proud of both of us, of what we've become." Cole was quiet for a moment. "What have we become?" "Survivors, partners, maybe even family, in our own strange way." "Is that enough?" Lillian thought about everything they'd been through, the violence and fear and loss, but also the strength they'd found, the trust they'd built, the choice they'd made to stand together. "Yeah," she said, "I think it is." That night, for the first time since the wedding, Lillian came downstairs after dark, not because she couldn't sleep, but because she wanted company. Cole was by the fire, carving another spoon. She sat across from him, watching the wood take shape under his hands. "Can you teach me?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "To carve?" "Yeah. It's not easy. Takes patience." "I've got time." Cole handed her a piece of wood and his spare knife. "All right. First thing you need to know is you work with the grain, not against it." They sat there for hours, Cole teaching, Lillian learning. Her first attempts were clumsy, the wood splitting wrong, the shapes uneven. But Cole was patient, showing her again and again until she started to get the feel of it. By the time they went to bed, Lillian had the rough beginning of something that might someday be a spoon. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Spring turned to summer. The garden Lillian planted grew, beans and squash and potatoes. She learned to preserve food, to make cheese from goat's milk, to repair her own clothes when they tore. Skills she'd never needed in Red Hollow, but that kept her alive here. One afternoon in July, she was working in the garden when she heard riders approaching. Her hand went instinctively to the rifle leaning against the fence. But it wasn't danger. It was Tom, accompanied by a woman Lillian had never seen before. Maybe 50, weathered face, kind eyes. "Lillian, Cole," Tom called. "Got someone who wants to meet you." The woman dismounted. "Mary Fletcher," she said, extending her hand. "Tom's my brother. He's been telling me about you two. Thought it was time I came to see for myself." Over dinner, Mary explained that she ran a boarding house in a town 20 miles south. She'd come to invite them to a dance the following weekend. "Dance?" Lillian repeated. 4th of July celebration. Whole town turns out. Music, food, dancing. Thought you might enjoy some civilization for a change. Cole looked skeptical. "We don't really do crowds." "It's not a crowd. Maybe 50 people. Good folks. Nobody who'll ask uncomfortable questions." Mary smiled at Lillian. "Besides, when's the last time you wore a proper dress?" Lillian hadn't worn a dress since the wedding. Hadn't missed it, honestly. But something about the invitation appealed to her. A chance to be normal. To dance and laugh and pretend just for one evening that her life was ordinary. "I'd like to go," she said. Cole sighed. "Fine, but we're not staying late." The dance was everything Mary promised. Lanterns hung from trees, a fiddle band played on a makeshift stage, tables groaned under potluck dishes. People were friendly without being nosy, welcoming without demanding explanations. Lillian wore the dress she'd bought in Sacramento, simple blue cotton, nothing fancy. But when Cole saw her, something flickered in his eyes. "You look nice," he said. "Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself." He'd trimmed his hair, shaved, put on a clean shirt. He looked younger, almost carefree. They danced badly. Neither of them knew the steps and kept trampling each other's feet. But they laughed, real laughter that Lillian hadn't heard from either of them in months. Near the end of the evening, a slow song started. Cole hesitated, then held out his hand. "One more?" She took it. They swayed more than danced, barely moving. Lillian rested her head against Cole's shoulder, feeling his heartbeat steady against her cheek. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me this. A life. A choice. Yourself." His arm tightened around her waist. "You gave me the same thing. I was just existing before. Hiding. Now I'm living. Are we doing this right? This marriage thing?" "I have no idea, but it feels right." "Yeah," Lillian agreed. "It does." When the song ended, they stayed like that for a moment longer than necessary. Then Cole stepped back, his hand lingering on hers. "Ready to go home?" Home. Not the cabin. Not Shadow Ridge. Home. "Yeah. Let's go home." They rode back under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. The night was warm, perfect. When they reached the cabin, neither of them wanted to go inside just yet. They sat on the porch, watching the moon rise over the mountains. "I've been thinking," Cole said, "about the future, about what happens next." "And?" "And I think we should make this place better, build onto the cabin, maybe get more animals, turn it into a real homestead." "You want to stay here, permanently?" "If you do, this could be ours, really ours. Not just a hiding place, but a home." Lillian looked at the cabin, at the cleared land, at the mountains rising beyond. A year ago, this would have seemed like a prison. Now, it felt like possibility. "I want that," she said. "I want to build something, with you." Cole took her hand. "Then that's what we'll do." They sat there until the moon was high overhead, planning and dreaming, talking about gardens and livestock and maybe eventually children, though that felt far off and hypothetical. But possible. Everything felt possible now. When they finally went inside, Cole paused at the bottom of the ladder to the loft. "Lillian?" She turned. "Yeah?" "I meant what I said, about this being your choice. If you ever change your mind, if you want something different, I won't. But if you do, she kissed him. Quick and impulsive, and probably not very good since she'd never really kissed anyone before, but honest. When she pulled back, Cole was staring at her in surprise. What was that for? For being you, for giving me freedom to choose, and for not making me explain everything I feel when I barely understand it myself. Cole's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I'm not good at this. At feelings and words, and I know, me neither, so let's just be. And figure it out as we go. I can do that. Good, she smiled. Now go to bed. We've got work tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. Lillian climbed to the loft, but this time she left the curtain open. She could hear Cole below, settling in for the night. The sounds were familiar now, comforting. She thought about the girl who'd climbed this ladder 3 months ago, terrified and alone, who'd believed her life was over. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who'd faced down criminals and won, who'd looked her father in the eye and walked away, who'd chosen love freely instead of having it demanded. Outside, a wolf howled in the distance. Lillian smiled. Once, that sound would have frightened her. Now it was just part of the mountain's song. She closed her eyes and slept without nightmares. The years that followed weren't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. There were hard winters and failed crops and times when money ran short. There were arguments and frustrations and days when they got on each other's nerves. But there were also victories. The cabin expansion Cole built, adding 2 proper rooms and a real kitchen. The foal Mabel delivered in the spring. The first successful harvest from their expanded garden. Small triumphs that added up to a life. Tom visited regularly, eventually bringing Mary with him. They married the following year in a quiet ceremony on Shadow Ridge with Cole and Lillian as witnesses. News from the wider world filtered in through Tom's visits. The Covenant's collapse had created a power vacuum in Denver that took years to resolve. Charles Harrow's testimony, recorded before his death, had exposed corruption throughout Colorado's territorial government. Reforms were made. Laws changed. Lillian's name appeared in one newspaper article about the Covenant's victims who'd escaped. She was listed as whereabouts unknown, presumed living under an assumed name. She liked that. Let people wonder. Let the world think she'd disappeared. She was right here, living openly, just as herself, finally. 5 years after the wedding, on a summer morning almost too beautiful to be real, Lillian stood in the clearing watching Cole teach their daughter to milk the goats. The little girl, 3 years old, dark-haired and stubborn, was struggling with Gertie and getting frustrated. She won't let me, the child complained. Because you're pulling too hard, gentle, remember? Like this. Lillian smiled, one hand resting on her swollen belly. Another child coming in 3 months. A boy this time, if the midwife was right. She'd never imagined this life, never dreamed she could be happy in rough clothes, with calloused hands, miles from civilization. But she was. Happier than she'd ever been in silk dresses and social calls. Cole looked up and caught her watching. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, so different from the hard man who'd stood at an altar 5 years ago. He walked over, leaving their daughter to wrestle with Gertie. You all right? He asked, his hand going automatically to her belly. Perfect. Just thinking. About what? About how none of this was supposed to happen, how I was supposed to be sacrificed and you were supposed to be my captor. How wrong everyone was. Cole pulled her close, careful of her belly. Maybe they weren't wrong. Maybe we just rewrote the story. I like our version better. Me too. Their daughter squealed in triumph. She'd gotten milk in the bucket. Not much, but some. Did you see, Mama? Did you see? I saw, sweetheart. Good work. The child beamed and went back to her task with renewed determination. Cole and Lillian stood there, watching their daughter, the cabin behind them, the mountains rising beyond. A life built from ashes and choices and stubborn refusal to be victims. No regrets? Cole asked quietly. Lillian thought about everything they'd survived, the violence and loss and pain, but also the strength and love and freedom. Not one, she said. And she meant it. The girl from Red Hollow was gone. The sacrifice at the altar was gone. The captive bride was gone. In their place stood Lillian Maddox, wife, mother, survivor, free woman, and she was exactly where she belonged,